Let's talk about what happens when your body's own defense system gets its wires crossed and declares war on itself. We're diving into the incredibly complex world of systemic diseases, where the very thing designed to protect us becomes the enemy within. And right from the start, this French phrase really gets to the heart of the problem. True chameleons. That's what these diseases are. They can look like almost anything, constantly changing their symptoms, their appearance. The shape-shifting nature makes them an absolute nightmare to diagnose. And for patients, it often kicks off this long, frustrating ordeal known as diagnostic wandering. So, to make sense of all this, we're going to treat this like a real medical investigation. First, we'll define the enemy. Then we'll profile the two main attack methods. After that, we'll become detectives, learning to read the clues the body leaves behind. We'll follow the investigation all the way to a diagnosis. And finally, see how doctors try to control that inner fire. At its core, this whole thing is about a profound betrayal. The system that's supposed to be your guardian has turned into the attacker. It's literally a civil war raging inside your own body. And because the symptoms can be so vague and widespread, many people spend years just trying to get an answer, lost in that diagnostic wondering. Okay, to really get a handle on this, we have to make a distinction that changes everything. You've probably heard the term autoimmune a lot, but there's another, less known category called autoinflammatory. They sound almost the same, but trust me, the way they attack the body could not be more different. So here's the deal. Think of your immune system as having two main branches. Autoimmune diseases involve the adaptive immune system. These are your special forces, your highly trained snipers, but they've been given bad intel. They've mistaken one of your own cell types as the enemy, and now they're launching a very precise, targeted attack. On the other side, you have autoinflammatory diseases. This involves the innate immune system. These are the shock troops, the first line of defense. And here, there's no target. It's just chaos. It's a brutish, widespread bombardment. The system is just overreacting to nothing in particular. And this analogy just perfectly sums up the autoinflammatory condition. There's no specific enemy to hunt down. The body is just stuck on high alert, fighting ghosts. The result is just waves of pure, raw inflammation. Fevers, pain, fatigue, all because the body's alarm system is screaming fire when there's not even a flicker of smoke. So if this war is raging inside, how does it actually show itself? Well, the battle leaves a trail of evidence. And one of the best places for medical detectives to start looking for clues is, surprisingly, the skin. It can act like a mirror, reflecting the chaos that's happening underneath. For example, a classic sign of lupus is this distinct butterfly rash that spreads across the nose and cheeks. It's a perfect example of an internal disease leaving a visible fingerprint. And different diseases have their own unique calling cards, like these purplish bumps on the knuckles, or skin on the fingers that gets so thick and cracked it looks like mechanics' hands. Each one is a vital clue for doctors trying to piece the puzzle together. But the clues aren't just on the surface. Deeper down, there's another critical process often at play: vasculitis. It sounds technical, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It's just inflammation of the walls of our blood vessels, the body's entire plumbing system. And this is what makes vasculitis so incredibly dangerous. Because our blood vessels go everywhere, if they get inflamed, the disease suddenly has a highway system to attack any organ it wants: the brain, the kidneys, the eyes, you name it. This is exactly how a single disease, like Behçet's, can cause everything from simple mouth ulcers to life-threatening neurological problems. You know, sometimes the body's own defensive strategies are what cause the problem. Take the granuloma, for example. It's actually a really clever tactic. When the immune system can't totally eliminate an invader, like the bacteria that causes tuberculosis, it does the next best thing. It builds a tiny prison around it. Immune cells pack together and form a wall to contain the threat. But here's the paradox. In a disease called sarcoidosis, the body goes haywire and starts building these little prisons all over the place, especially in the lungs. But there are no prisoners inside. They're empty. And for reasons we still don't fully understand, the sheer number of these empty prisons starts to build up, crowding out and choking the healthy tissue around them. The solution literally becomes the problem. Okay, so with all these bizarre and overlapping symptoms, how does a doctor actually put a name to the disease? It's a lot like a police investigation. You very rarely get a confession from a single test. Instead, doctors have to meticulously assemble what they call a bundle of arguments to build their case. The investigation usually kicks off with some general blood work, just a first sweep for any signs of inflammation. If something pops up, they dig deeper. They start searching for specific signatures, like the anti-nuclear antibodies you find in almost every person with lupus. But even that's not always a slam dunk. So when the blood work isn't enough, you have to go to the source. You have to interrogate the tissue directly, and that means a biopsy. And sometimes that biopsy gives you this smoking gun. In a disease called amyloidosis, they take a tissue sample and stain it with a special dye. When you look at it under a polarized light microscope, if the disease is there, the tissue glows with this unmistakable, almost eerie apple green color. At that point, there's no more debate. The case is closed.
But diagnosis is not always so clear-cut. Sometimes doctors run into a biological paradox that seems to make absolutely no sense. I mean, just imagine a disease that could do two completely opposite things at the exact same time.
This actually exists. It's called antiphospholipid syndrome, or APS. Now, inside the patient's body, this disease causes dangerous blood clots. So logically, you'd think a lab test would show their blood clots super fast, right? But here's the mind-bending part. The complete opposite happens. In the test tube, the exact same antibodies that cause the clots in the veins actually interfere with the lab chemicals and artificially slow down the clotting time. The lab result screams bleeding risk when the patient is actually in danger of clotting. It's this exact, bizarre paradox that points doctors straight to the right diagnosis. So, once the detective work is done and the disease finally has a name, the mission changes. For most of these conditions, there is no cure. We're talking about chronic management. The goal is to douse the flames during a flare-up and then do everything you can to keep that fire from roaring back to life. The number one tool for putting out that fire? Cortisone. It is an incredibly powerful, incredibly fast-acting anti-inflammatory. But, and this is a huge but, it is a massive double-edged sword. It's a lifesaver in a crisis, but using it long-term comes with a whole host of serious side effects, from weakened bones to a higher risk of diabetes. So the whole strategy is to hit the crisis hard with cortisone, to get it under control, and then, very slowly and carefully, taper the dose down. At the same time, doctors bring in other maintenance drugs to keep the immune system in check long-term. And now we have these amazing targeted biotherapies, which are like molecular scissors that can go in and cut the one specific wire that's causing the problem. And of course, just as critical is patient education. Someone with lupus has to know that sun exposure is like throwing gasoline on the fire, making sunscreen absolutely non-negotiable. When you really step back and look at it, what we're talking about is the incredibly fragile line our bodies walk every single day. The line between self-defense and self-destruction is just razor thin. And the latest thinking on what causes these diseases is that they're born from a kind of explosive encounter, a perfect storm. It starts with a genetic predisposition. Maybe you carry a specific gene that puts you at risk. But the gene alone usually isn't enough. It needs to meet some kind of trigger from the outside world. And that trigger could be a virus, an infection, or even something as common as sunlight. And this raises a massive question for the future of medicine. If these devastating diseases start in that complex dialogue between our DNA and our world, what we eat, where we live, what we're exposed to, could the key to finally preventing them be hidden right there in that very conversation?